I guarantee there's lots of auto body technicians, auto body painters that make more money than a lot of engineers out there.
Oh my God. Are you on drugs?
So she thought you were on drugs.
She thought I was either doing drugs or I was an alcoholic.
I would have a little fun on the weekend here and there, but I was extremely focused on what I wanted.
I know people have one arm in the business and they're great body techs.
What made you pivot to teaching full time?
I got tired of being told I wasn't important. It was the first time me and you had a big boy talk. Kyle made it hard for us to teach.
It is time. It is time for a new era of the Blue Collar Kyle content. I've been making my content for you guys for about 6.5 years now. Haven't changed it a lot. It's evolved some, but it's still the auto collision industry, first person perspective content. Don't worry, that's not going anywhere. I have lots more of that to come. I have at least 100 of those videos sitting in my hard drive right now I still have to make and put out. So stay tuned, but I want to introduce you guys to the new podcast I have. I've been putting this together for a while. It's been a lot of work, but here we are, ready to go. And today I'm going to introduce to you guys one of the best people I know, one of the smartest people in the auto collision industry. He was my instructor for auto collision at Rankin Technical College back in 2005 to 2007. He's been in this industry for many, many, many years. One of the most intelligent people in the industry I've ever known, and just a great person and a great friend, Mr. John Hildebrand. He's coming up shortly, so stay tuned. But be sure to help me out, share this content, help me get this podcast out. It's going to be on all platforms, including audio platforms I'm still working on. It will be on there shortly as well if it's not yet already. So stay tuned and welcome to the Blue Collar America podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Blue Collar America podcast, episode number 1. I'm here with my former instructor from college for auto body, Mr. John Hildebrand. And John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Kyle, I've been in business a long time. I've been around since 1985 when I graduated. It's kind of funny, we have a lot of similarities. I started a vocational school out of high school. I felt that maybe I didn't fit the college profile too much back in the 80s. And I went to a high school program. Went there, was very lucky. I had a family member that was in the industry of automotive. It was a place called Greeby Oldsmobile, not around anymore. And I was just a porter. Started off at 15, moved my way up. Loved watching people work on things. That was probably I'm not like the engine guy. I'm the guy that was over there kind of looking at, man, that thing was all wadded up. Yeah. Now it's like, that is so cool.
And so you like the art part of it.
To me, it was the art piece, Yep. And then what I also noticed is these people are not just artists, they're also really just good people, right? I mean, and I realized that they do a lot of communicating. It was something that they had to talk to other people to get things done, so it's a lot of teamwork. Yeah. And that's kind of what I like. I like working with teams. So I did that, went to high school, got a really good opportunity. I had a great instructor, Mr. Sansucci. We went to the same South County Tech.
Yep.
And is a great man, taught me a lot, went out in industry, and you know what, Kyle, I did really well.
Yeah.
But something else happened. My brother, who was 5 years younger than me, had an opportunity to go to night school at Rankin. And I went.
He went to
Rankin to do night school collision repair.
Gotcha.
Because I was doing really well and my brother was kind of lost. He didn't know what he wanted to do. He's very successful now, but not in collision, but he's in the automotive industry. And I had an opportunity because a friend of mine that worked in the refinishing, we used Sikkens at the time, and a friend of mine says, "Hey, John, I'm teaching a class because I'd like to know if you'd like to come in and sit in the class with me and help me." And I'm like, "Sure, what am I going to do?"
As like a teacher's assistant or...
Yeah, I can be a little teacher assistant, and it was kind of interesting. My brother was there at the time, and he goes, "Yeah, the instructor, they had to let him go, so they're the paint companies coming and help." And so the person asked me, "Do you want to come and help?" And I thought, well, this will be kind of fun. I didn't have any kids at the time. I was almost married, so it was like, yeah, I'll do that. What the heck? Kyle, that was it. That was what took me to on my journey.
That's what got you interested in teaching.
Oh my God.
Now, before you started teaching, did you teach anybody within the shop that you worked at? How long were you at the shop that you worked at?
So
or
I
in the
actually
industry?
I was really at the same shop for many years. So there was a lot of shops if you think about the early 90s, there was a lot of shops that were closing, changing dealers and stuff. And I always worked in a dealer shop. So I've always worked for a Chevrolet facility, other than probably about 9 months I worked for Ford. But I've always worked for Chevrolet. So I was very blessed that really for about 10 years, or I would say, no, I take that back. 7 years, I worked for the same people on the same corner, which is where Don Brown is right now. So I have to say that Don Brown, I worked for them the longest, right? And then I went from there, and I went to a place called Don Dar, which is over on Lindbergh. Everybody I worked with are super amazing people, but no, I never taught with them. And I'll tell you why I got into education. And I don't know, I mean, and you may see this happen a lot, and that is, I always really cared about what I did. I looked at it as a piece of art, right? And I think the collision people have to understand that a lot of times there are people out there that are really, they want it to be not just aesthetically right, but they want it to be perfect.
Right.
Okay. We can't make things perfect, but we can make them safe again. We can do all this stuff. And I didn't feel like I was really getting that. So when I started teaching, I felt that I could finally really do what I want to do and show people the right processes, because I wasn't taught that, right? So when you try to teach back then, I was faced with people who would say, "Oh, the teacher, oh, you're Mr. Teacher, Mr. Teacher." And I was razzed pretty bad for even teaching. But you know what it was, is I was really already teaching in a sense with the insurance folks. So insurance people would come in, and I made great friends. And by doing that, they would always ask me how a process worked. And I would have found out later on what I was doing is helping them be successful too. But I was also helping myself be successful, because I was explaining the processes. Because you go back to the 80s, there really wasn't none of that. iCar was started out in about 79. It was just starting to get up and going. We had ASE doing ASE testing. General Motors had some good material, but it was very, very lucky if you got any of that. And I was blessed to get some of that training.
There wasn't a lot of procedures
No.
as far as how repairs are done.
No.
It was more just old school methods.
Well, as you probably, I know you have an old Camaro, and you built that car.
Yep.
And you probably remember whenever you take the fender off, a dozen shims fell out.
Oh yeah.
So that's what the world was about. It was like, if it ain't right, shim it.
Yeah.
That's what we said.
Because there wasn't as much safety built into the cars at that time as there is today.
No, we used to say we blessed every car with fire, because the torch was your best friend. You would heat the metal up. You didn't care what it looked like. It just like, woohoo, I made something happen, right? And so...
And to be fair, on a lot of those older cars,
you could.
that wasn't a big deal, because there wasn't any type of structural integrity built into the safety features of the structure of the car.
You're absolutely correct. And I think one of the things that people also forget is that back then, people didn't keep their car very long.
Right.
So a lot of people, it's been wrecked. And I remember as a young man, a lot of people would get their cars fixed. And we're talking pretty good sized wrecks. And they would just go right up to the dealer and drop off the keys and say, "I want something else. I just got my car fixed." People didn't keep cars long, maybe 3 years, right?
Yep.
So to me, it was really interesting. It was a really interesting concept back then, how it worked. But I realized early on that I was helping people. I didn't realize how much I appreciated it. But what it did cost me was, I was considered a good employee. I think if you ask any of my employers, I was a great employee. But I wasn't your big money maker. And I struggle with something that's not such a big deal today, and that I was what they call a consistent. I made consistent money.
You were reliable.
I was reliable. I was there every day. I was huge work ethic, and I didn't know how important that was until later on, because I didn't know that I had that until many years after. But
a lot of the times, I feel like the people who have the best work ethic don't realize they're always doubting themselves.
yes,
They're questioning themselves. Whereas the people that are kind of lazy, they think they're doing plenty.
oh yeah,
But the people who really have the good at work ethic are always questioning, am I doing enough? Am I working hard enough? I do this. I've done the same thing many times. Question whether I'm doing enough, even though I know I am. But
You know something the new generation does for me? They energize me because you know a lot of people say, "Oh, you know, here I am, 57 years old," and I meet a lot of people that are 18, 19. And you go, "Oh, they're lazy. They're lazy." It's not. They live different lives than I did. You know, I ran around on a bicycle and I came home when the lights came on. You know.
yeah.
But kids today, they know when to stop. What I am very impressed with is I really do believe in hiring youth, you know, what I do. And I think that it's amazing to watch people know that it's time to work, they work. When it's time to go home, it's time to go home. That's something I wasn't brought up in. And that's something that, you know, and they got amazing work ethic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that's really important. And so for me, getting into the trade, didn't really realize how important that was. But you know what? It goes back to taking care of the customer. And it was always our goal to take care of the customer. And I love taking care of people. So when I started teaching with realizing I could teach, I didn't think I could do that either real well. But I will tell you something, what it was. I learned that I know what it's like to struggle as a youth. And I had an opportunity to work with some amazing young people over their lifetime to watch them be as great as they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't easy. To teach was not easy. It's not what you think it is by any means, you know.
Yeah. When did you start teaching, roughly? Do you remember
1997.
You were teaching night school at that time?
Night school. So I'll tell you what happened. So I worked with this guy in refinishing. His name was Jay. Great guy. And you know what? I couldn't stop thinking about teaching. I mean, I couldn't. And so I remember it was the first time in my life. So I've never had to ask for a job in my life. I've always had an opportunity. That's one thing I think, as you know, we always have opportunity. I never have worried in my life about a job, ever. Mm-hmm. If I do the right thing and I'm doing what's supposed to be done, you never worry about that. Okay. And so the first time I wanted something so bad, I actually went and talked to a guy by the name of Larry Schmidt, who was actually the department head for Rankin Technical College, and he was at a refinishing seminar. And I was nervous. The first time in my life, I was really nervous. And it's the first time I said, I want to work for you, you know? And it's like, the rest is history. Started out, I worked every semester. I worked fall starts, September. I would do the spring start. I would do extra events. I'd come to every advisory board. I did all that because it was so important to me. And what I learned was all the things that I wasn't taught in school. You know, and I tell you what I always told people was the most important thing with being a good technician is understanding why you do what you do. You know, a lot of people are great technicians. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
And they're self-taught, you know, or their dad taught them and stuff. And they're great people. You know, I've met so many great people. But also I will tell you that you can be much faster if you understand why you're doing what you're doing.
That's true.
And I didn't know that. You know, it's kind of like, you know, one of the things that we talk about, there's two of the most important things that people don't think about when you're working, and something that you do every day and you don't realize it, really important to be safe.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know when the first time you have a piece of metal dug out of your eye, you know that I don't ever want to make that happen again. So then the other thing is that I can tell you that it's finding information.
Yep.
You are productive because of the information that you're provided by your employer, or the information you know how your equipment works and all that kind of stuff. The two most important things that you should be able to do, and that should be something that's taught. Realizing that, the other stuff takes time. Straightening, welding, all that stuff takes time. Practice. You know, and that's the hardest thing. This generation is so gamified that they look at something and they go, oh, I've already done that. Why am I doing it again? You're going to fix 1,000 little dents.
Yeah. They want instant results. Quickly.
They want instant gratification, instant results. And, you know, we all went through that. I went through it. I can remember the first time I actually straightened something, and guess what? It was straight. And it's like, wow, I can't believe I did it. But, you know, people don't realize that when I started in the trade, we have lacquer paint that you had to feather edge way back so you didn't get bleed through. The products have changed so much. The ability, everything is so much better than they were. But as time went on, I was able to I did that for 10 years. Eventually, I was able to, and I will tell you something. My wife was able to stay home with the children. I worked at Rankin part time, and I did a full time job there at Don Brown. Moved to Don Dar. Great people. They were really helped me be successful because you don't know. You need people, and I think you would probably agree with me that behind every really good technician is somebody you looked up to at the facility. Somebody gave you a break, and you were
You were one of those people for me.
Well, I appreciate
learned a lot from you. Yeah.
And we learn a lot from each other today, right?
Yeah.
We hang out, and it's like, I think it's so cool what you do. And you know what? And I'll tell you, the youth is really what drives me to do this, right? You do it every day. I mean, I'll tell you something, Kyle, and I think it's important people know this. I've known you for a long time, and people see you on the screen, right? And they see that and they're waiting for you. And I'm an ICAR instructor, and I can tell you how many times that you were at an advisory board that I had, and that people would come to my advisory board and go, I know Blue Collar Kyle was here because he did a podcast or he did something. But you know what was really interesting to me is that they don't understand who you really are.
Right.
You are a very hard worker, and you talk about work ethic. We talk about work ethic a lot, and a lot of kids are really, I feel bad for them because they're told, oh, you can't do that. You don't have any work ethic. You know what? That's not really true. If you have a passion for something, and you know this personally, you have a true passion. When I met you, you were a young man. Your first car you worked on at Rankin that you had as a part of the team was a Camaro, a black Camaro you worked on.
Yeah.
And in that Camaro, my brother bought that for his son, who lives in the same neighborhood that you live in right here.
Right.
So it's funny, not just that, but you were very detailed back then because you had MySpace. You had a MySpace.
Did I have Yeah, I did have a MySpace.
And you showed that to me, and that was so weird to me. I was like, what's MySpace?
I showed you the MySpace?
Yes.
I don't remember this.
Yes, and then and I thought it was so cool because early on, you probably don't, a lot of times as an instructor, people don't realize that we do pay attention. And I remember you were working at a place not too far from school. They're off of Kings Highway.
Yep.
And you were doing some of your first video work. And I remember me and you talking about,
This was 2007, 2008. Because when I first graduated from Rankin, I started my first job at a body shop. Mm-hmm. And I went and bought a digital camera. This was before fancy iPhones. Mm-hmm. Dating myself here a little bit. And I bought a digital camera and I kept it in my tool cart, and I started taking pictures of every job I worked on, and I would save the pictures and make a portfolio of the repairs. It wasn't videos, it was just pictures. But
do you know that's why we do portfolios at Rankin? Your portfolios was reason why we did it is because it was the first time I saw somebody proud of their work.
Really?
So this is probably the first time you heard that, but if you knew why we had the portfolios at Rankin when I was there, it was because we saw that the students were proud of what they did. Mm-hmm. And the cell phone allowed us, for the first time, for the students to be able to show people what they can really do. And today we've advanced that to a lot bigger piece.
Well, let me finish that story, because what I ended up doing with all of those pictures that I was taking, I was at that shop for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And I made a website called KylesCollisionRepairs.com.
That's right.
And it was basically a resume for myself. And I used it, and I sent it to you guys. Yep. And I remember hearing, because I knew some students a few years after I graduated, mm-hmm. that you guys would show it in the classes and stuff. And I heard people were making fun of me, and I didn't care. Just dumb kids. It didn't matter to me. But I heard kids were making fun of me and this and that, like, look at him and whatever. It's what got me my next job that I'm at right now. Because whenever I went to my interview with Scott Schaefer, mm-hmm. the very first thing he pulled up when I walked in the interview was my website on his computer. And that's literally what got me my job there. And I'm still there today, 15 years later.
Do you know, I don't think people realize why we told, you hear the story about what they said, but do you know why we did what we did? To show your website?
Huh.
Because we always try to get people to think about something they didn't think they could do. What we do as teachers is convince people that you can do what you think you can do if you want to put effort into it. Yeah. That's really what this is about. This is really not a hard thing. Now, I will tell you, there are some people, and it is really true. I've met some people that do have two left hands, you know, but they're great people. They have to understand you can still be in the automotive industry somewhere. It may not be what you think it is, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't do this stuff. And I know people, I know people have one arm in the business, and they're great body techs. And you know what? They work hard to be that person. And it goes back to, are you willing to put the time in to be great? Because that's what it is. It's building yourself up. And I think it'd be wrong if I didn't tell you that one of the coolest experiences I had with you, and you may remember this, you were at an advisory board meeting early on when I was still working in the industry, when I was still there. And it was the first time, and parents will understand this, when you have your first big boy talk with your kids. It was the first time me and you had a big boy talk, because before you were my student. But me and you talked about a repair that was being done on one of the foreign cars. It was a BMW at the time. They had a very bizarre repair process for the core support. And I think there was a lot of rivets it showed and stuff. And that's what it was. You're doing what the manufacturer asked you to do, right?
Yep.
But it was for us, you know, you got a really nice Camaro. We're all about making things look the way they were. And it was one of those things. That was our first big boy talk. I don't know if you ever remember that or not, but I remember that. And it was something you put on the website, because that's how I knew about it. I said, hey, I saw what was going on. And like I said, the reason we showed it was to show people you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think you've been a real inspiration for a lot of people. It's a shame that people see some people as possibly they have to, and I'll say some of it's jealousy.
Right.
I do see it. But I think what it is, if they really understood the full spectrum of what we're trying to do and what you've done, you're legit of who you are, right? We all make mistakes. And I think I tell people this all the time, is the only person who's ever perfect, they hung on a cross, right? That's what my grandma told me.
Absolutely.
So it's like, you know what? You do something that I saw, and that's why I think it's so important that people know this, is that, you know, as somebody that's much older, I look at things differently. I can't do some of the things. I'm not saying I couldn't do it, but it's not my passion to do it. But to watch what you've done and the following you got, and to see it from a backseat perspective, from MySpace to where you're at today, I look at it as you brought so many young people into the industry. And I go all over the country. And I can tell you, Kyle, I talk to instructors all the time that show your videos to students, because they don't understand. They don't have the stuff that Rankin had, right? They rely on what you're doing and telling. And there is people out there that you've brought to this industry because they enjoyed watching you. And I really feel like it takes a lot of people to change our industry and to change what we've done. And I think that, you know, it goes back to those Rankin kids. A lot of them laughed and said whatever. But look at where you're at today and what you're doing.
Criticism's never bothered me.
No, it hasn't.
It doesn't faze me at all.
And you know, that's the difference between me and you, right? Because that's probably my kryptonite. I want everybody to like me. But you know what? I also know that, you know what? Not everybody is. You know, there's a lot of people out there that isn't going to like somebody.
Yeah.
But when you're doing the right thing, and I think that at the end of the day, I would rather somebody be looking up to somebody like you versus somebody that isn't so great, right?
Sure.
And I think that when you're looking at our industry and what we're trying to do, cars are not the same anymore.
No, not at all.
We talk about this all the time, is that cars aren't the same.
It's changed drastically since I've been in the industry. And that's not even that long.
No.
And it's a whole different ballgame now.
I think when a person that wants to get into the collision business, and I think you make this very well known in your videos and stuff, there's so many opportunities, but you are really a craftsman. You know, I always say in a sense, you're an engineer, because what it is you're taking something that a manufacturer sets a set of standards for, that you have to be smart enough and have the skill to really put that vehicle back together to their specifications, right?
Sure. Yep.
And now you add a lot of this electronic stuff, all this ADAS, automatic start, all this stuff that we never had years ago. Multiple airbags, you know. I always think about Demolition Man. And if you remember, It's kind of dating me, but everything was Taco Bell. But if you think about it, it was like everything filled with foam in there. It's almost the same. How many times you get a car that's got all these airbags blown in? Like, oh my God. But it saved the occupant, right?
Yep.
And it's our job. It's really different because I think when I got into the industry, it was about making money, putting the car back together. It was a piece of art, right? Just what it was to me. It was like I could stand back for somebody that never had anything I said I did myself. I could say I did it all. But now you're putting a car back on the road for a family to drive safe. And and I'll tell you, when you people need to see what that car is made of. A lot of people see assembly line stuff on TV or on maybe YouTube or something. It gave us a lot of new opportunity. But the cars have changed. When you tear them apart and you're seeing that, you have to think about those cars being on the road for 20 years.
Right.
So you think about it today. If you're not welding something, you're not putting the proper materials in it, epoxy coatings, the cavity waxes, all the stuff that, I know everybody's doing it, right? Well, they say they are.
Yeah.
But, I know in education, we teach it, we do it. And I talk to a lot of people. But I will tell you this, if you put a rail in something, you don't know what that car's done in 20 years. So you have to think that those people, there may be a kid that's riding a child seat today that later on will be the one that's taking over that car.
Yeah.
And that person is a beginner driver. That beginner driver may not drive the way, you've driven that car the whole time.
Yep.
And
kids crash cars. It's almost inevitable.
It is. And you're relying on that technician to do the job because you don't know. I see it all the time. You're at the mercy of, did that person have a good day? I tell that student all the time, you need to come to work with the idea that you're helping your family, yourself, because literally you've got somebody, you're putting them in your hands.
Yep. Now you spoke about engineering. So let's go back to, so you taught at Rankin.
Yep.
You did night school, then what made you pivot to teaching full time and leaving the industry as far as actually being a tech?
I'll tell you something. I'll be straight up with you. I got tired of being told I wasn't important. Now this was back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. I had a boss that used to tell me all the time that, you don't do what I tell you to do. I have 100 resumes in my drawer, and I got tired of the person that made and this is legit. So back in those days, we had a lot of people that slopped work together. We used to call them hackers.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call them today. I don't get into that too much, but they're hackers. And the only thing they were worried about is how much money they could make and how fast they could get off on a Friday. Mm-hmm. And I hated the idea that I always made steady, but I also had the highest CSI. So I had the highest customer satisfaction index for Buick and Chevrolet for many years. Mm-hmm. That wasn't important to them. What was important is how many hours you turned. And what was sad was a lot of these people that worked really hard and make lots of money had a lot of comebacks too. And it was hard for people like myself who really want to do an awesome job to do an awesome job anymore. And as I started to educate myself more, I felt that really maybe I'd be more useful in a teaching role and to give students the opportunity to learn things that I wasn't able to learn and bring the skills that I had to the teaching side. So, and my son was born, when my son was born, I actually started, not a year later, my son was born, I worked in industry for about 5 years. And then when in 2003, I went full-time.
Full-time. And then I started at Rankin in fall of 2005.
Yeah.
So that's when I met you.
Yeah.
Fall of 2005.
I still had a lot of industry in me. It was hard. So it's kind of funny, I think that I'm a little bit more refined than I used to be. I could talk like a sailor if I wanted to.
Sure.
It was kind of funny. It was funny because one of the things that what they told me at Rankin is that they said, we want to bring you on. It wasn't much money. You take a huge pay cut. And I think I believe that's really kind of wrong, and we can get at it at a different time. But I will tell you that we were, I'm trying to think how to put this, but so coming as a go get into something you really like. I've never been a person that was about the money. It was always about my pride and performance. And I mean, I will tell you one of the things that I enjoyed doing. I was a big hard hit guy. I loved hard hits, and I also like doing redos. But it usually makes you somebody that a lot of people don't like. I got
Because you would be redoing other people's work at the same shop.
no.
Oh, okay. I was
So
gonna
I
say
would
that
have-
would be real.
Well, I will tell you, I have done some other people's work because if it's done 2 or 3 times, then it were the people that made all the money. So for me, I started realizing something I really liked to do, and that was to really communicate more. So the reason why I loved doing what I did is I realized this later on. It wasn't something I got into it for this reason. Was when I was a technician, I realized that I was doing something for people greater than I thought. And what I mean by that is the second most expensive thing you purchase in your life is an automobile.
Yep.
And if you've ever had your car fixed by somebody, and I didn't really know this because I fix cars all the time, it's not always great.
Right.
And back then it wasn't really great at all. You know, the industry has changed in such a better way. And for me, I would get these people that you felt for them, and I would do these re-repairs, and a lot of it was huge money. And back then we fixed a lot of cars. You know, we didn't total like we do today. So I remember, I can't tell you, I've had extremely long-term friends, people that would tell people, "Where's John at?" "Oh, John went to Don Dar." "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to Don Dar." You know, and it was just, I had a following.
Sure.
And it was something because I was being able to use what I was taught as I started teaching myself as an educator by reading and understanding these processes. I could do better. I could actually show you where some repairs need to be fixed. And I think that that's really where, you know, getting into iCar was what I did. But yeah, I went in 2003, and how I started at 2003 is it really was kind of interesting. They needed somebody because they changed the program from a 9-month program to a 2-year program.
Oh, it was a 9-month program.
Yeah, it was 9 months.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so it was a 9-month program, and Rankin always ran a 9-month program. I think it was really interesting. Somebody someday will do the research. I believe that Rankin is probably the oldest collision program west of the Mississippi. It really was started in the carpentry department. We don't realize this, but there was no cars until 1907 when Rankin started. So when you think about it, they actually used to teach the people how to cut the wood for the inside of the Model Ts and stuff. So it actually started. So it's got a really interesting past.
Yeah,
And probably up to 1980, they actually had all the patterns at one time. So they used to do that. They don't do that anymore, of course. But if I go back, so getting to understand the car, understanding what it really was, it kind of gave me people knew who I was. I met a lot of people. I started teaching iCar classes. I loved it. It was really great. But what's really interesting is that I was actually hired to help teach a course for Enterprise.
Oh, interesting.
So I came in the summer, June 2003, to teach my first class. My first class was that I was going to be there to help teach a very intense class for people that for Rankin does for Enterprise. And it just seemed like everything fit. You know, I had Enterprise, we're doing this. Later we had turned into some fleet training. We did some other stuff. I just love dealing with industry because.
So Enterprise has been connected to this industry for a long time then.
Oh my God, yes.
I didn't realize that.
So it started off in automotive, on the automotive side, because, you know, when Enterprise was just Enterprise, because Enterprise wasn't always what they are today.
A massive company.
Massive company. You know, it was really started here in St. Louis, and it's very interesting. But they've been around, and they've been with Rankin for a long time. They've done a lot, but they've done a lot for St. Louis. But what's really interesting is that's really where I learned that we need to all understand what our needs are. And it's always been my goal is to try to bring industry and education together, because somewhere there's a disconnect. And I think probably in the next 5 years, you're going to see the biggest change in education you've ever seen in anybody's life. And with that, you're going to
specifically in the collision automotive.
I think how we teach students generally.
In general, okay.
You know, how we teach them in general. I mean, we probably, I don't know about your high school time, but I hated high school. I felt like a misfit. I felt like I didn't fit in.
I barely went.
Yeah,
I'm surprised I graduated.
Yeah. And so for me, when I found something I truly enjoyed, I was there every day. I was a perfect student.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, we gotta find that. And so I think that, that was my savior, is who I was. And I think that what you find is industry is really needing, we don't have a good communication device out there. Industry needs things. And, it doesn't have to be what people think it is either. I think that students should have opportunities, in high school, like I did. I didn't have to go to college I learned it from high school, but it took
And that was
a lot
the
more.
introduction. Is that the introduction that got you interested in the industry in general?
What got me interested in general is when I was a young man sweeping floors at Grebe Oldsmobile, my dad had to pull me away from the body shop because they would be like, "Where are you at?" We didn't have cell phones back then. He would get on the loudspeaker, "John, where are you at?" And it's like, and I'd have to come running. And I would be back there in the body shop. And it'd be like, "What are you doing back there?" "I don't know, but whatever Larry's doing, it's super cool. Whatever John's doing, that's so cool."
So your dad worked for...
Yeah, my stepfather worked. My mom's husband, my stepfather, he worked for Grebe Olds. He was a service manager.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
if anybody knows, working for your parents sometimes is a lot harder than working for somebody else.
Sure.
But it was the first time he couldn't keep me, because I was a very shy kid.
So that originally got your interest.
Oh yeah.
But then the high school program...
High school brought me to where I'm at.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of value to these high school programs that keep getting shut down.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's something to be talked about too, is that our industry has been let down by schools, right?
Yeah.
We can get into that someday, but it's just the idea that you need to make a conscious effort to get what you pay for. And that means that industry has to stick up and come in like you did for Rankin, and you set on other ones, and you need to set that this isn't what we need. People need to do more of that. And one of the other things is the students what I find is students being very interesting to me is that they do know, they're smart. They do a lot of research. It's like
It's so easy nowadays.
Yes.
To look anything up and find out information about anything.
Yeah, we used to have to go to the library, and if I was lucky, I think I had my mom had an old set of encyclopedias, but they were kind of old. But you can't, now you can do research really quick. You can do a lot of stuff, but a lot of these kids really kind of understand more than I did when I was in the trade, right? So we just got to give them the opportunity to be where they're at. Industry needs to be more in tune with for instance, I believe that everybody's put on this earth for a reason. We all are on a journey. I really do believe that when I talk to a lot of managers and owners, their job is to put the cars, to have a business, to put the car back to work, on the road, safe for the people, and to make their employees happy. That's what it's about, right?
Yep.
It should not have to be in their job description to teach, but you can mentor. That's important. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you need to invest in a place that's going to help you do what you need to get done. You don't have all the resources. So you need to find the schools, go out there and be part of things, do things. Don't take no for an answer type of stuff. And go out there and cultivate the relationship and get what you expect. You're not always going to have a college that does this, but you also need to make sure that you understand that the student has to be given some skills to be successful. And it can be, very simple skills, but you need to grow the student. You got to put all that aside and you got to grow the student. The student has to want to do it, but you really have to give them what they need. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're not always going to be great. They're going to make their mistakes. This isn't like being a mom and dad. This is more like being a true mentor and understanding how to constructively talk to somebody. It's a lot different today for a student than it was for me.
Different generation.
Totally different generation.
Completely different mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Yelling at them doesn't always work.
No.
Some of them it might.
Right. Most of it isn't. It's kind of funny. When I first started this, I was young. I was more of, your older brother age when I met you. I was more of, if you had an older brother, I'd be that person. Maybe your neighbor. People would listen to me more. As I got older and grayer, my tone of voice turned into dad. Nobody listens to dad. But they would listen to grandpa or your father.
Well, I remember whenever I was at school, you would have a megaphone.
Yes.
And you would start yelling at there'd be about 100 students, I think, in there at a time at that time.
When you were there, yeah.
And you would get on the megaphone towards the end of the day, and everybody would be cleaning the shop every single day. The shop stayed perfectly clean. And that was important things that people need to be taught that they don't realize.
Yeah. It's the simplest things. I tell you something, Kyle, how many people don't make their bed in the morning?
It's important. I'm a big proponent of making the bed in the morning.
You think, well, that's silly. I'm going to get in the bed anyway. And there's a lot of people that don't, and I'm not condemning anybody that don't. But it's a start of completion.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't try to make my bed perfect, but I just want to make it to where it's presentable. So whenever I get home, I typically don't make the bed now because I'm the first one up in the morning, but on the weekends I do.
My wife.
And whenever I was single, every morning I made the bed before I went to work. Every morning.
Because you want some kind of completion. You don't want to come home to that because you're going to look in there and go, oh, I didn't complete that. Right. And what does that start? That cards, the next thing you know, your clothes are on the floor. Yep. So I always tell people, the most important things that we can teach students is, number one, cleanliness. You say, well, body shops are dusty, dirty. If you're dusty, dirty, unorganized, it causes you not to make the type of money you think you can make because you're constantly searching, you're unorganized. It's all about processes. And for some reason, our world has got away from processes, right? Oh, you got to have a process on your phone. You got to do this. No. Pick up where you're at. It's like, I know a lot of people, I'll watch amazing technicians out there that bring tools to the toolbox and then bring tools back and forth, and they never have a mess. You shouldn't look like what we used to call a dust bunny. You're bringing that everywhere. You're breathing that. You're doing all that stuff. And then if you really look at it, it's not. You're cutting your lifespan down. There's a lot of stuff to that. But cleanliness is the most important. It's the best feeling. Organization. Being part of a team. When I would use the megaphone, I had read an article, and this is kind of crazy. And I read an article about football players and their coaches. What does coaches do? They yell up. They yell. They get your attention. It's about, a coach is what I really prefer myself to be. I wasn't a teacher. I didn't go to school to be a teacher. And I think an instructor can sometimes be a little much. I'm more of a coach. Does it look good? You can throw that pass, son. Work hard at it. You'll do it. Same thing with straighten a dent, right? It's giving people the confidence to do the best job they possibly can. That's really what it is. And there's people out there that are great life coaches to these kids. So for me, when I used the megaphone, it was to get attention, to know that I was watching you. And it was about, we know there's some spots that you may have missed and that somebody else is watching you. So when you go to work, somebody else is watching you. And you know what was really interesting is watching you folks. That was a team building experience every Friday. And or Thursday, I guess it was every Thursday. You guys did that. We cleaned up. And I think
I thought we cleaned the floors every day.
You did, but remember,
we did a deeper clean.
We did a deeper clean. We do like a sweep and stuff. But I remember what was interesting about it is everybody started getting to the point where it's like, well, that guy didn't do a very good job. So what does that do? It's starting to recognize that you can do something,
right?
And that you know what right and wrong is, or what good and bad is. And that's really what it is. It's as simple as picking up a broom. It's what we do is we've seen a lot of young people. Actually, I hate to say it, but it's actually sometimes, how many times have you worked with somebody in your lifetime that isn't my job? I'm sorry.
I hate that comment.
I do too. And I hear it too much because it is your job. Because you are allowing people, that's where the slippery slope is. When you allow that to happen, then somebody else is going to do it. Next thing you know, you're like, how did we get here? I've watched plenty of people go from wonderful facilities and stuff and have one bad egg that's turned it into, oh my God. But yet, for whatever reason, they kept that person. Some people own facilities like that, right?
Techs need to clean up after themselves and keep their area clean But the shops also have a responsibility to maintain that, to hire porters or whatever it might be to keep the shop clean.
Absolutely.
Shops currently are having such a hard time finding technicians. Good quality technicians are going to go in the shop and they want a nice, clean working environment.
Yes, it is.
And if one thing that shops can do to make a difference to attract better technicians is make their shops as nice as possible, because that's going to attract the better technicians every time.
You know another reason why we did it? Because when parents came in, it was really changing perception. Because parents would come in and go, "Oh my God, my kids! Oh my goodness!" When I got into this trade, and I've told you this many times, I remember I had a very good friend in high school. When I knew I was going to South County Tech, I had made a comment in front of one of my best friends at the time's mom, and she goes, "Oh my God, are you on drugs?" She was serious.
Because
I was going to go to Rankin and be a body technician.
So she thought you were on drugs.
She thought I was either doing drugs or I was an alcoholic or something. Because
Right.
I hate
And
to
that's
say
my
it.
line. Bring respect back to the blue collar,
That's right.
because people think that kind of shit.
They do. And it's not the fact. You have to be smart to do this, Kyle. I mean, I've been out of it now for quite a while. I try to stay in it enough to make sure I'm giving relevant information to students and people I work with. But I'm going to tell you something. For me to be able to tell you, and I just go out there and do it again, no. I stay in the technology, but it's a lot. This is a young man and woman's game. Keep an eye on the young ladies. They're very attention to detail. I've met some incredible women over my lifetime that are doing incredible things.
Yeah.
And so don't think it's a guy's job. It's not
definitely
all
not.
guys. And, but I will tell you, that's how it was brought to me. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. As I met some people, I could see where they would think that. But no, I don't want people to think that. I want people, we got to have the understanding. Something David Rankin, it's on the building at Rankin. It says, the dignity of labor. You got to be proud of what you do. You're building something, and the closest thing to what we do at Rankin to Collision, to me, is probably building houses, right?
Sure.
Because it's something you can sit back and look what I did. I put the trim up, I hung the windows, whatever.
Right.
But it's something you can
You
stand
get to
back.
see that finished product.
That's right. And we're visual people.
Yeah.
I want to see what I did. I always laughed. And this is something it was at Skills one time, and I was listening to somebody. I was at Skills competition with one of the plumber students. And he was talking about, and I didn't know any of this stuff, but they get into how, the flush and how fast it flushes and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, when I was a technician, we would go, man, that looks pretty good. How'd you get that to look that way? How'd you get the peel? Or how did you get the undercoat to be similar? Or, man, you got those gaps looking really nice, or whatever it was. You know what? I looked at the plumbers, and the plumbers were going, man, that thing flushed fast. And it's like, oh my gosh. It's like.
And they take pride in that.
Oh my God, they did. And you know what?
The way the pipes lay, and there's a lot to it. Probably a lot that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But
it's so funny that when I go to like a Home Depot, because I do home stuff, and you go to Home Depot, I love new construction because if you look at all the conduit. Mm-hmm. It's perfect. It's art. Mm-hmm. And I think that people don't understand that the trades is art. It's what you do.
Yep.
And you can make a lot of money at it.
Yep.
And I think
Look at the electricians.
Oh my gosh.
If the wiring coming out of the panel is nice and neat compared to if it's just a bird's nest of wires going everywhere, I mean, it makes a big difference in the appearance.
It truly does. And I think that's why it's important that, whether you do collision or whatever it is, some of them are tough, right? So when I look at it, I think some of the tough stuff is, I have a lot of mechanic friends because I work in a dealership my whole life. And I'm going to tell you something that's pretty funny that I spent a lot of time with the dealer end, and these technicians, at the end of the day, what do they get to say? Man, I did another campaign. Boy, that car run good. We get to stand back and look at what we did.
Right.
We know we're going to put somebody out in a car that's safe.
Yep.
That's a big accomplishment. You are a true engineer. You have to follow our procedure. This isn't the 80s and you throw a couple shims in it and it's going to be okay and they're going to trade it in at the front. It ain't the way anymore.
It's very different than if you take an engine apart and put a new intake manifold gasket or whatever it might be. When you put that engine back together, it still looks the same.
It does.
I mean, it might sound better, it might run better, so you do get that type of satisfaction, but taking a car that's crushed and bringing it back to life, it's just a different ballgame. It's an art.
It is.
And I respect both. I came up in the mechanical field.
You know what? I can tell you, I'm lucky because in the 80s, we fixed everything. We did fix engines. We would pull engines out. We sent them to machine shops. We didn't do things that came out of a crate. I'll replace that with a Serta transmission, replace the engine. I mean, it's almost getting to the point where they're a lot like, we got as technicians, right? Because we were parts replacers. I really hated to see metal get thin because we started seeing more replacement. But because of probably COVID and stuff like that and some of the problems of getting parts, you become straighteners again. We started learning there's amazing equipment out there that now allows somebody to do straightening without all this filler, and it puts craftsmanship back in what we do. I know you work with Kiko. Amazing people, there's other ones like, there's other companies out there that do the same thing.
There's a bunch of them.
And I think that you have to understand the bigger picture in that, right? It's not it's about teaching people something they didn't realize they could do. Because it's like PDR. I came in PDR, we used to grind everything and mud everything. So when these people came out with those pointy sticks and started pushing dents up, we're like, oh, this is going to go. Now everybody does it.
Yeah.
We try to teach it to our students too, so they get an idea.
So get back on track, you taught at Rankin for how many years? Because currently you're not, for about the last 4 or 5 years, you're officially not teaching anymore.
No, I haven't taught since 19. So I taught there. I was department head for 8 years, and then I guess you could say I worked there almost 30 years with my night school experience and everything. I think I'm officially at 27 or 28 years, so I'm almost there 30 years. 10 of it was done during a night school. That's where I learned my trade, learning how to talk to people, understanding everybody's got different needs. I met some amazing people in my evening school program. Evening school is not the same anywhere anymore.
Right.
School and education isn't the same anymore. So you got to be very careful about what you're getting into. But yeah, so about 30 years.
And now you are leading the collision engineer program.
So yes, in 2019, I was given an opportunity through a grant with Enterprise and Rankin.
Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Yeah, Rent-A-Car. Yeah,
doesn't know that.
They saw there. It's really interesting. Enterprise sees they really do want the best for our industry. Because that's what made them the best. And we had an opportunity. They saw the program I was running where we're putting collision students to work right away. And that's really what it's about. I will tell anybody before I get into this, if you're going to go get a skill somewhere, I don't care what it is, make sure they get you a job. Get a job. Because I will tell you, that's how you know if they're worth their weight in gold. If you're going to because if you're going to want to be somewhere, one of the things that we saw was a lot of our students weren't getting jobs. And when they try to get a job, and this is what happens, and you probably had some of this, you had to really prove yourself. By doing it on 8-week blocks like collision engineering does, it allows you to ease into the job. And it also, we teach our employers not to understand you only can do certain things, right?
Yep.
So we eased into it. So Enterprise saw the need to because the industry's been asking for somebody to help. This is not a fix for everybody, but what it is I'm more of what we do is try to help schools become great. So Rankin, I was blessed to work for Rankin Technical College for 27 years. I'm still on the campus, but in 2019, I was given the opportunity to become the lead for the collision engineering program. And the goal was for us to start little Rankins, the Rankin model, which was actually done by the same instructors that taught you, Larry Schmidt and all those that were there. We put together a program that was it's founded on the students. It's all student-centered. Not to say you can't fail, not to say you could have to repeat, but the whole deal is that it's student-centered. And what we did is we looked at what's the problem? Why can't students stay in? What's the problem? Well, what makes people great? Well, the first thing we look at is there's something really important to understand that's called skin in the game. So one of the things that I have to say that Enterprise has is they have skin in the game. They've decided with Rankin's help, that they would put this program on, and we'd call it, now it's called collision engineering. It was many names prior to that. I was known as the Rankin guy for a long time when I was going to schools. I'd walk into schools and, hey, how about if I help you? But what it really was is try to find schools and instructors that was like the people I worked with, which is they just cared so deeply about their students. You really can't go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Find the best and let us help you become the greatest program in your area. Because, at the end of the day, not everybody can teach their students. They can't. It's very costly for you to teach and to do your job, and there's a lot of good and bad. But if the truth is, we're all paying taxes for these schools. Why are we not getting more involved? So that's really what this program does. It's about teaching schools how to give the industry what they need, because we believe that we need to be teaching what industry needs, not what we think needs to be done. And then the idea is make sure people are learning something so they're productive at work and they can be successful long term.
So you're helping connect students and schools to shops, as well as connect OE manufacturers to the schools as well, mm-hmm. and create like a whole collaboration between all of them.
Right. I'm a big team player, right? So being in collision, it's all about team, right? I've taken that, and that's I've got an amazing team I work with. And I will tell you that it's about understanding that industry's out there and wants to help. And I saw that in COVID. When COVID shut everybody down, there were a lot of industry partners out there were like, we're going to offer all this stuff to the school. And I would sit there and I'd go, that's super cool, but nobody knows how to use that. Right. How can you help these students? So if you look at things like
they're just handing out equipment, but nobody knows how to even use it.
Or
so it ends up sitting in the corner.
Yes. So it goes back to, so it's really about bringing students into an industry. I think of myself a lot, and you probably put yourself in this position, that I was scared. Mm-hmm. I was lucky because my stepdad really helped me have confidence, but I also had a great mentor. And, my mentor, still alive today. Matter of fact, I talked to him 2 weeks ago. One of the things that I think is important is to give people the respect, but I also think it's important to shut up and listen once in a while. So I gave them respect, shut up and listen. I learned a lot. And I want to do that for my students, right? And that's what this program's about. Give yourself an opportunity for 2 years to really grow. And I tell these people this all the time. And I say, you know what? I know that right now it's important and everything. Shut everything down in your life. This is the only time in your life that this is for you. Yeah. And you need to concentrate on you.
And that's what I did whenever I was at Rankin.
Yes.
I wasn't going out and partying. Yep. I was very focused. Right. I would have a little fun on the weekend here and there, but I was extremely focused on what I wanted, and it paid off.
What I will tell you, and I will tell your listeners, is that you are a good student for many reasons. And I will say that, I'll say, oh, you're just saying that because you're sitting in front of Kyle. No, Kyle made it hard for us to teach because Kyle was always inquisitive. He paid for going to school. You remember this. Mm-hmm. You always ask questions that was like stumpers. You always ask the stumping questions. Yeah. And as instructors, that makes you a better instructor. So to me,
I've never been scared to ask a question that if I'm curious about something, I'm going to ask. I'm trying to understand.
The most important thing is to ask the question.
Yeah.
And find a way to ask the question where you're not being a problem, because some people just ask the question in the wrong way.
Right. You don't want to do a I gotcha type of thing to try to make the instructor look stupid or feel stupid. You want to ask it in a respectful manner, really.
Right. And I will tell you this, we all know the tricks.
Oh yeah.
We know all the tricks. I mean, there's lots of kids, we get it. We know when you don't study. We know all this stuff. We were there. So it's not to me, you pay for this, right? So first of all, let me tell you, you pay for us to give you knowledge. I really believe that you should make sure that you get a job out of this, but it's your job to learn. It's a two-way street. It's having skin in the game. Yeah. And when Enterprise put us together, that was the important thing. Everybody had a skin in the game. So ask the questions, figure it out. But you have to be present at this thing. And there's a lot of students that came in behind you. You know, I was an ICAR instructor, and I've had a lot of crazy questions asked to me. And you know what? That's what makes you fresh. It makes you learn. If you're a person that just wants to learn at once and that you just want to sit back on your laurels, this isn't the job for you. It isn't. You're constantly learning things and doing things, and that's what the cool part of this is, because every day is an education.
Yep.
You know, going back to my story, because I know I kind of buried a little bit. So back when we come up with collision engineering, the idea behind collision engineering was this. So when I was 1985, when I got into this trade, I was called a body man. We didn't have painters back then. We were all combo people.
Right.
And so somewhere in 96, we turned into collision technicians. And it's like, oh, wow, I got a name change. But as you know, because you got into, you know, when you were a collision tech, cars aren't the same anymore. So, you know, I can tell you that truthfully, cars, you have to almost be an engineer to fix a car today. You got to know how to weld. And, you know, as you do, you go to training all the time. And you know what? Somebody's going to tell you if you're doing it right or wrong. And it's up to you to make sure you're doing it right. When it comes to finding information, you got to be able to do that and know, you're taking care of your future customer constantly. So I think that really we have to be very understanding of what we're trying to do as an engineer. And I know a lot of people, I've ruffled a lot of people's feathers that were engineers because, well, you're not an engineer. I said, I dare to tell you that if I didn't follow instructions, which really, what did they do? Yeah. It's following instructions and understanding the math and structure behind it. We didn't follow it, it would be pretty sad out there.
And you know what? I guarantee there's lots of auto body technicians, auto body painters that make more money than a lot of engineers out there.
You're right.
I guarantee it.
And you know, you're in an era now, our industry, cars are expensive. They're going to spend more money to fix them. But they need technicians that are intelligent. The days of you're an alcoholic, how do you do drugs? That's a thing of the past.
Yeah.
You're taking drug tests. You're doing all this stuff because the liabilities today are so great.
Any even halfway reputable shop is not going to allow any of that shit to happen. It's just not.
And
I'm sure there's a few out there, but there
probably is
very few.
But most of them are leaving. They're out of the business. You know, when they get out of it. But I'll tell you something. I mean, it's important to make sure that, you know, what we try to do is put somebody to work in a reputable business. I don't want my students that have worked really hard not to be in a reputable business. So, you know, part of the program of collision engineering is also make sure that we connect them with industry. Make sure that people that want to work with you are working with you.
Yep.
You know, and they understand what you've learned. There's a whole process behind it. And I think it's important that people understand that we are really trying. We are not going to do it all. It's not what this is about. This is a company that believes in what we're trying to do, trying to help industry. And I have to say that I am very pleased to be part of Enterprise on doing this, because they are really trying to make a difference. And I dare say that anybody else is. And I know this is going to probably ruffle some feathers, and I don't like to do that. But you know what? What they're trying to do is something somebody hasn't tried to do, and it's not about putting a bunch of money in their pocket. They're really trying to help the future of collision repair because it's been so good to them.
Right.
And that's what's so really good about it. We've got a lot of people that support us, but it's not about how much money we can put in your pocket. It's about taking care of the students. So really what we do, so you understand, it's about the student. Matter of fact, we had some coordinators there today from across our country, and they were here for some training. And I asked them, I said, who's your number one customer? Well, our number one customer is our student. We got to know who our customer is. And that doesn't mean that we're going to just do things for you. What that means is we're there for you when you think you can't do it. We're going to give you stuff, or help you get through, you know, maybe some educational problems, maybe help you get, you know, there is stuff. Go to the website, figure it out, right? Go to the beacollisionengineer.com and look at it. But I will tell you, it's about doing things that I didn't have when I was a kid. I wish I could have gone to college. I went to college a lot later in life, but I didn't have that opportunity. But here's an opportunity that we will work with you so you get a job, you're reputable, and we're going to get you the training you need to be great. as great as you want to be. It's not as great as I want you to be, because I want you to be Superman, but I want you to be as great as you think you can be. And that's why it's so cool about sitting here with you in your first episode, is because I remember you as a young man from South County Tech. You weren't a rebel, because they changed the name of who they were back then. I can't remember what they were.
I don't even know.
Yeah. So I think the thing was kind of cool is that, look at what, you strive to do and where you're at. And it's because you're just determination to do so. People thought you were crazy. They thought whatever, jealousy, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you're successful at what you're doing. You bring a lot of people in this industry that look at this that may never looked at it before. And you're doing what you always wanted to do, And I think that's, to me, that's what we're doing. We're just one opportunity, but I will tell you, if you got a dream, you had a dream, and you never let anything stop you.
Nope, never will.
Never will, and I didn't either. I was put on this journey. It's a crazy ride, but it's the coolest thing I've ever done. And I think it's important for us to understand that if you really want to do something, for once in your life, trust yourself, right? There's people that help you.
On that note, sorry to cut you off.
That's all right, it's fine.
We're going to wrap this up.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
want to keep you because we could go on for hours and hours and hours, we have many times without the cameras and the audio. And but we'll do it. We'll do it again.
Yep.
But I want to thank you, John. I greatly appreciate you coming out and doing this with me. You've helped me in lots of different ways tremendously. You've helped a lot of students in lots of different ways. So I greatly appreciate that.
Well,
and everybody, be a collisionengineer.com is the website. If you want to check it out, see the partners of the program and everything else, what schools are in the program. And we're going to be doing more of these. I've got plenty more podcast stuff coming. This is my first one. I have a lot of, I'm going to keep modifying and changing things and lighting and just trying to get everything dialed in. So stay tuned for a lot more things coming, and follow me on social at Blue Collar Kyle, and I'll talk to you guys later.